Hello again, and welcome to another entry in my vlog, Gardening by the Moon. Follow me as I learn how to grow food using the energies of the lunar rhythms and hopefully in time other biodynamic practices. Along the way, I'll also be sharing the highlights of my quest towards higher frequency and sustainable living. I've been looking at the main lunar cycles such as the waxing and waning moon and the ascending and descending moon, and in this episode I'm looking at the Sidereal Lunar rhythm. This cycle lasts 27.3 days and defines the movement of the moon in front of the zodiac constellations. The theory goes that the constellations are associated with elements, for example Aries is fire and Pisces is water, and these elements create atmospheres which are conducive to different types of activity. As an example, for sowing, biodynamics state the following: plant root crops on earth days, flowers on air days, leaves on water days and fruit on fire days. They further advise that an ascending moon is preferable, and you can see a previous video I made about what that is. Website moongrow.com offers suggestions of work to be done during the different signs. This further breaks down the types of jobs to be done within the elemental groupings. So for example, in earth signs, pruning to limit growth should be done in Taurus, while pruning to shape growth should be done in Virgo. While I was researching this, I found this site, gardeningbythemoon.com, which I have nothing to do with, but they also offer suggestions for work to best utilise the strength of particular signs, as you can see here. To use the same examples, they show Taurus as good for many tasks, but Virgo has more selective strength. Lunarium.co.uk write that this is a major difference between the American and European systems, as it's much more important to the Europeans. The calendar that I'm going to be using from Biodynamics Services uses the Astronomic Calendar, which is shown on the outside circle here, as opposed to the more traditional astrological calendar, which uses regular 30-degree spacing for the astrological signs, shown here on the inside. According to Biodynamics Services, although this cycle forms the bulk of indications of most sowing and planting calendars, the effects of this cycle haven't been confirmed by some researchers. Elsewhere, Considerer.org reference Nick Colostrum, who is of the opinion that it is this cycle which corresponds to the final crop yield. Whereas the phase of synodic cycle, that's the waxing and waning moon, is related to the general growth of a plant, it is the sidereal cycle that is mainly linked to the final crop yield. A sidereally based rhythm applies to one instant in a plant's life, when the seed is sown on moist ground and growth begins. At this critical moment, it is the moon's position against the zodiac which influences the overall development, that is, how the seed's potential will come to fruition. In a web search, I found a paper dated 2001, which I'll link below, hopefully, which involves Nick Colostrum and is titled Evidence for Lunar Sidereal Rhythms in Crop Yield, a Review. It's a very dry piece chronicling some attempts to scientifically test the strength of the theory, and concludes that it may have a practical significance for agriculture. In my humble opinion, this is where the real success in this system is. Everything has its own frequency, and the principles of harmonics show, to the human ear at least, that some combinations of frequency are better than others. It's already understood quite well through cymatics and solfeggio tones that frequency can affect matter in different ways. I don't think it's a huge leap to conclude that different complex energetic harmonics can be found to benefit or hinder different processes carried out under their influence, even if the transmitters of those energies are perceived to be a very long way away. So, as I go forward and start compiling to-do lists for the garden, I'll be trying to build my timetable as closely around this as possible. In other news, I started my compost pile last week. For the record, I did it during a descending moon, which is alright by my agenda. It's basically a pile of old grass and weeds that I pulled up. You can't really see that it's a pile from this photo, but that's because I filled a hole about 1 metre deep and 2 metres long with it, so it's a bit of an inverted pile at the moment. Next on the shopping list will be a fork to turn it occasionally. Next time, I'll look at the other aspects and dates that will be featured on the calendar, and then I'll be turning my attention to some more practical applications in the field, as spring hopefully approaches. Until then, take care and stay happy. Goodbye.